Shalom.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, because I just changed my setup a little bit, so I'm hoping my sound is still good.
Mm-hmm.
We were, we are continuing our deep dive into the Sikha on Shemot, which we started last week. Hey, Tayo. Um, which we started last week. This is going to be kind of Hebrew intensive, so I apologize if it's too intensive. But yeah, so how do you want to begin?
So I don't know if we want to do. I guess what we did last time, the format was working. Was there something else that you want to? I think it worked for me.
No, I mean, so last we didn't actually finish Ot Bet,
No.
and I don't know. Do you want to start off at the beginning to get a running start, or do you want to keep on going, or what do you want to do?
So I guess let's go. I think we stopped at וכמו שמציינו בעלי דמתן תורה.
Mm-hmm. But
So
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I guess so. Maybe let's recap the last kind of point. I think it was talking. We were talking about ascent, the ascent and descent,
Mm-hmm.
and this one specifically was talking about um, how each time you ascent more than where you were before.
Right. Every descent is for the purpose of an ascent,
Mhm.
because where you end up with after the ascent is higher than where you were before you descended.
Right, and it says that it's hen mitzad המשכת אור אין סוף
Mm-hmm.
מלמעלה למטה ואין מצד התעלותם. So you're not only ascending, the light is also descending. So
Or Ein Sof,
and
right? That's the infinite light of
Mhm.
Hakadosh Baruch Hu,
Yeah.
um, is coming with you on this trip.
Okay, is it coming with you or is it coming from, because if you're from, or is it, there's two parts in you that one can be is below and one is above. So it's all happening within kind of like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is funny because I was today listening to the discussion that um, that Sam had with Jordan Wood or Woods, and they were talking about this idea of patripassianism, which so Christians were having this huge discussion about the Trinity where they're like, oh, well, God can't suffer. And so if Jesus is God, how could he have suffered? Which starts with a very bad premise, which is that God doesn't suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because obviously we see that all through the Bible, I would say, obviously, we see that our sins cause God pain and suffering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way we understand that is um, whenever we are in galut, whenever we are in a state of descent, that chelak alakam imal, that uh, portion of divinity that is embedded in us also descends along with us into our sinful state, and that causes that's what we call shchinta b'galuta. That's what we call the Shekhinah or God's indwelling in exile. And God, and this is something the rabbis have said, I mean, over and over and over again. So when you are in a state of sin, and essentially when we pray for the Geulah, when we pray for salvation, right? We're praying for Geulah, the Geulah of the Shekhinah, of God, and I mean this is such a central thing to Judaism, that late atar panu mine, there is no place that is truly without God.
Right.
And so when the tzimtzum happened, right, when God in essence created this hester panim, this darkness, right, he created a darkness that is not he created a darkness that is only from our side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no darkness from God's side. And that's what it means. Hester panai, I shall surely hide my face, al hara'ah, right?
Yeah.
Because it is through God's hiding that we perceive a darkness. We even though we are in the dark, the sun is still there. We just don't see it.
Right. So there's two things that you were talking about here, I think. One is what you just said, where there's a darkness from our end, from what we can perceive, but not from the other end. And then the other thing that you were saying at the beginning sounded like something like you said, there's a portion of divinity in everywhere in the world, in every situation that we're in. So that makes me think about, like, if I'm thinking about movies or like a literary kind of thing, it's like all the time when there's a protagonist, they're in the worst dark night of the soul, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
There's always this little bit of detail that you think, this is gonna be the light. This is gonna be like the string, the thing that they can pull and to get out. So I guess that's the part of the Shekhinah that we're always need to be aware of. Like, where is the self? Like, what's the thing that can get me out of any particular thing? And that actually makes me think of Viktor Frankl for some reason, in the Holocaust. Like, what was the thing for him that was like that he could see in that very bad place, that he could like think, okay, this would be meaningful for me for some reason, and for others?
I mean, I would say at the most basic. So the Mishnah says many things, but one of the things it says that you should be is ohev et habriot, right? Love those creations, briot, right? And the commentators, this is from the Mishnah Avot, and the commentators say, what does it mean, ohev et habriot, right? It means that you have to love those things which have no other ma'ala. They have nothing that is that recommends them other than the fact. Hello, Jocelyn. Hello, Edwin. Other than the fact that they were created, right?
Right.
And so at the bare minimum, right, the Borei Olam, the fact that the Borei Olam created whatever it is means that it must have a purpose.
Right.
And this is what Rabbi Akiva said, Kol da'ar Rahmana Avid, Letav Avid. Everything that the merciful has created, he has created for the good, right? That doesn't mean it is good, but it means that it ultimately has a purpose of good.
Right. That's like the makes me think of all the story, all the, I don't know if it's all midrashes, but all the story about the spider in the
Right.
in the cave.
With
Jonah too.
David, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God makes a point to Jonah about the plant, the kikion,
Kikayon, yeah.
kayon, and I think the orev, the crow.
Mhm.
That's a good example of like the crow wasn't doing something good in itself. Like he wanted to do bad because he wanted to help Elijah spread the like.
I'm trying to remember the story. I don't remember the story with an Orev.
There was something about Elijah was being Eliyahu was being very negative about Israel, and I think the crow helped him in some way. And the crow was doing that not because he was trying to be good to help him, but only because he wanted to just it's more of a destructive bird. The same thing with like what happens with Noah. But even though it was doing something destructive, it still had a certain purpose, and also that whole story had a certain purpose to it, which is for the good. So
I don't know the story, but the basic lesson you're talking about is very fundamental to Judaism, right?
Yeah.
So what does it mean when it says kol hakoes kol minei gehinom sholtin bo, that anyone, and kol hakoes keilu avad avodah zara, that anyone who gets angry, all manner of hell rule over him, and anyone who gets angry, it's as if he has he's worshipped idolatry. Why? Because it is an aspect of idolatry not to recognize that whatever exists was created by the one God, right?
Yeah.
When you start imagining that something exists which was not created by God, you're denying God's existence, and in a way, it's as if you are worshiping idols.
Mm-hmm.
Hello,
Right.
Diggs.
Okay. Should we continue?
Yeah.
אוקיי. וכמו שמציינו בעלי דמתן תורה, דעם היות שגם קודם מתן תורה כבר ניתן הכוח על קיום מצוות. So like was mentioned in Matan Torah, in the giving of the
in
Torah,
the ascent, the aliyah, the Matan Torah, right?
The ascent of Matan Torah.
Mm-hmm. The inhiyot, that even though it is, yeah, this is very archaic rabbinic language. I know, it's very strange.
No, I know it takes me time to translate, but I need to get used to it. היות שגם קודם מתן תורה כבר ניתן הכוח על קיום מצוות. And also because before Matan Torah, before Sinai, the power to make mitzvot, perform mitzvot, was already given. בלשון הרמב"ם, שעל שישה דברים נצטוו אדם ראשון, אדם ראשונים, והוסיף לנוח איבר מן החי, כה בא אברהם ונצטווה יתר אלו וכו', ויצחק וכו', ויעקב וכו', והוסיף. So 6 things were commanded to Adam, or for Adam Rishon. And then Noah was commanded another thing, Evar min hachai. What is Evar min hachai?
Evar min hachai is literally, it means a limb from a living animal, So that is the rabbinic interpretation of what it says that you shall not eat the blood of a living thing. So the rabbinic interpretation of that is that Ben Noach is prohibited from eating something while it is alive, or even an entire limb of a living animal. So, for instance, and I was shocked to find out about this, there's such thing as Rocky Mountain oysters. These, when they castrate bulls, people will eat the testicles, right? And that would be ever minachai, because you're taking a limb from an animal that's alive, and you're actually eating a part of a living animal, and that's completely forbidden for Jew or Gentile in Judaism.
Okay. Okay. Let me finish that, and we see if we can come back to that. So then that was given to that seventh mitzvah was given to Noah, and that was, and then Abraham was commanded to do that, and then Isaac.
He was commanded milah, so that's an eighth one, right? And so there were more mitzvot until we get all the way to Matan Torah. So we see that there were actually mitzvot which were in effect before Matan Torah.
Right. And then Isaac and Jacob, the same thing. Right? They were added during that time.
Yeah.
More mitzvot. Ve'am Chazal, what is this abbreviation?
And our sages said, Amru Chazal.
Amru Chazal. דאבות קימו כל התורה כולה עד שלא ניתנה. So all our fathers performed the Torah, or the whole Torah before it was given.
Right. So this is talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right, even though the actual mitzvot themselves were not given, we have this general rule that in some ways the same spiritual act that was performed by that is performed by the mitzvot after Matan Torah were still available to the avot, to people with great spiritual acuity, even before. For example, it talks about how by digging wells, there was something that Isaac and Jacob were able to do by digging wells that was in some way keeping mitzvot similar to how we keep them now.
Yeah. So I'm curious if it's going to talk about like what was if you can call it a necessity of, if the fathers had an idea, or they were able to figure out what to do, the right way of doing things, what was the necessity of Sinai specifically?
Right. I think that's what he's going to get into right
Okay. You're going to help me with this abbreviation as well.
על
כל זה, הרי דווקא במתן תורה נתחדש, לא רק עילוי רב ותוספת כוח בקיום המצוות עצמן. So, on top of this, in Matan Torah we will be renewed.
Right. Was Dafka specifically through Matan Torah, Nitchadesh was renewed a particular power.
Power to perform the mitzvot, and כל העניין דבנו בחרת, בחירת הקב"א הקדוש ברוך הוא בבני ישראל, הבאה מעצמותו,
יתברך,
הקב"א בבני ישראל, הבאה מעצמותו, יתר שלמעלה מכל אור וגילוי שנתגלה קודם מתן תורה.
Right. So that Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that God chose the Jewish people, right?
Mhm.
That haba'a me'atzmuto yitbarach. This is something that comes from him himself, right? It's not when we say Matan Torah ata bachartanu, right? This is something that's coming specifically from above, not from below. This
Yeah.
is God Himself is revealing in a way that is beyond anything that existed before Matan Torah.
Okay, so it says Matzmuto. Can you read that last part? Yeta shelemala mikol or.
Me'atzmuto yitbarach, from his self, his essence,
Mhm.
and yitbarach, that he is blessed.
Right.
Shelamala mikol or v'gilui shenitgalad kodem Matan Torah.
Okay.
That is something which is above anything else which was revealed into the world before Matan Torah itself.
Right. So I remember something about how I was saying, also specifically about Matan Torah, and like that was the first time that that God revealed Himself to a whole nation, to the whole
Well,
entire
I
people.
mean, the Gilui Or by Matan Torah, right? It says Ra'u Ha'am Ra'u et Kolot, right?
Mhm.
So it says that the people saw the voices, the sounds, right? And so the rabbis say, what does it mean to see sound? It
Mhm.
means Ra'u. They were able to see something that no ear can hear, and they were able to hear something that no eye can see, right? That it was such a shattering of reality, right? To have Matan Torah Anochi, right? That God announces Himself, right? And that's what it means. The Malacha Hayam Kitanus. Why did you turn back, O seas? And the cedars of Lebanon shattered, right? God's revelation at Matan Torah is something that is beyond any human experience, to the point that the Midrash says with every single word that they heard mipiha gurvura, their souls left their body, and God had to resurrect everybody every time He said every
Yeah,
word.
it
Right?
was quite the scene.
It
Yeah.
was, yes. It was something. It is something absolutely indescribable, and it it completely changed the very nature of reality on Matan Torah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it says, right? It says that it was, I mean, God started by saying, giving the commandments, and He said,
Mm.
and he was able to give too before the people were like, we can't. You have to convey it to Moses so he can convey it because
Right.
our souls keep leaving and coming. It's too much for us.
Right. Yeah. It says that in the Torah itself. The people say to Moses, "We can't take this anymore."
Right.
And actually, I think it's the Talmud which says if they had only withstood the entirety of the giving of the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, at Matan Torah, then uh, that would have been it. Because so Matan Torah was at the beginning of the 40 years, right? So at Matan Torah, if they had actually withstood all of it, they migalin miyad umigalin lenetzach. They would have immediately gone into Eretz Israel, and there never would have been the two galiot. And I mean, again, so like we say, every yerida is l'tzorech aliyah. There's every ultimately when Mashiach comes and the world is filled with knowledge, we'll look back and we'll see how incredible it has been that the entire, like, everything has happened exactly according to God's plans, despite all our stupidities and mistakes. And in fact, what we thought for evil, in fact, ends up making things. God uses those for good, like it says, like Joseph says to his brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they sinned by selling him, right? Yet God used that for good. Similarly, Adam and Eve sinned, but God uses that for good. And similarly, Chet HaEgel, God uses that for good. And even this lesser sin of not taking directly from God the Ten Commandments and asking for Moses, right? It's actually very similar to later the Israel asks for a king, right? This is something that happens over and over again. That, you know, God gives us opportunity after opportunity. We fail, but God uses each failure to, in fact, bring us even higher and higher so that we don't fail next time.
Yeah. Was there something about, I don't remember if it's always God advocating this or it's like sometimes it's God, sometimes it's Moses, but it's advocating for they can do this. Like God advocated for let me start telling them the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
But then they couldn't take it, so then Moses did it. So it's always like trying at the higher level, and then it's too challenging, and then maybe we do it like to a lesser degree, but we build from there. I remember that was one example, and I can't remember the other example that was given.
Well, I mean, this is basically the pattern of Shvirat HaKelim, right?
Mm-hmm.
What God did by Shvirat HaKelim, He allowed His light to fill the Sfirot, right? The three higher Sfirot Chabad were able to stand it, but the six lower Sfirot, the Midot, shattered, and Malchut cracked, whatever that means, right? And then that started the whole process of tikkun. And once we have the tikkun, then the sfirot are in fact going to be in tikkun. They're going to be even stronger and able to withstand the light that they were not able to withstand at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And this is the process of zichuch, of refinement and sanctification, that the whole world goes like it's kind of like you know, your dad tells you, here, try this bike, right? And you say, I'm gonna fall, and he's like, you won't fall. Guess what? You fell, you skinned your knees, but you get back up, and next time you won't fall, right? And there's a similar thing where God is like, here, try, you know, and we try and we fall, and he says, come on, pick yourself back up, try again, and next time you'll do better. And that's a very basic. I mean, this whole idea of yerida l'tzorach aliyah is just fundamental to everything Jewish.
Yeah, I can see how important that is. Like, I feel like there's so many things in my life that I'm like, so many practical things that it's just interesting that that's the pattern that God goes through, that chooses to tell us, like, this is how I educate, or how I like communicate with people. Because I mean, I had a discussion with my sister about like how she's trying to do something with her son,
Mm-hmm.
Like she's not sure if she can withstand the descent that he would have, right? The small failure that he could have. So should she support him more, or should she let him fail a little bit or struggle a little bit and then like build from there. So it's kind of like a struggle, especially with somebody that you really love. Do I let them fail a little bit, or do I let them suffer a little bit? And it's just interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
The pasuk says Tisheva yipol tzaddik v'kam uresha'im yikashlu bara, right? So it's a tzaddik falls 7 times and gets back up, and 7 we know is like a number of many times, right? It's that and it says it's tzaddik, right? Yipol sheva, right? It's tzaddik falls 7 times. How much more so the rest of us? But the main point is to get back up.
Yeah. Okay. אוקיי, וכן הוא גם בנוגע למעלת דרגתם של בני ישראל והעולם, and this is also true for the height or the level of Bnei Israel, of the Israel and the world. דאף על פי שעל ידי חטא העגל חזרה זוהמתן של ישראל, by the sin of the golden calf, the what do we call it,
the zuhama, what do we call zuhama, defilement, the
defilement of Israel returned. What is that? מכל מקום לא הייתה זוהמה זו כמו קודם מתן תורה. It wasn't the same. It returned, but it wasn't the same as it was before מתן תורה. דעל פי שהבירור והעילוי דפסקה זוהמתן במתן תורה, היה בדרגה נעלית יותר מדרגת העילוי קודם חטא עץ הדעת.
Right? So you have the level of chet etz hadat, then you have matan Torah, and then you have chet ha'egel, right? And so what happens is that the zuhama, it's not that they go back to how it was before matan Torah. Yes, there is a zuhama, but this zuhama has a higher level, and I mean, I'm guessing he's going to get into it, but it has a higher level, which also, in a sense, means that it also is a worse zuhama, right? So they have reached a higher level, and kol gadol michavero yitzro gadol, right? The higher the level you reach, actually the higher level of capacity, the higher capacity you have for good, the higher capacity you have for evil, right? So this is a different dargah. We're talking at a whole different level after Matan Torah and Chet HaEgel than we were before Matan Torah and Chet HaEgel, even though we're saying, oh, like the zuhama went away, the zuhama came back. It's not the same zuhama.
Right, interesting. I didn't consider that. I didn't consider that part of like the zuhama, the defilement, the capacity for, let's say, evil or sinning, I guess, is also higher.
Yeah.
It's like you unlock bigger and bigger challenges.
Exactly.
As you move further up. Yeah. והיינו שפעולתו הייתה פנימית וחודרת יותר, לכן גם בירידה שלאחר זה עדיין ניכרת פעולתו. מתן תורה בדרגה נעלית יותר מדרגת קודם, ראינו שפעולתו הייתה פנימית וחודר. פעולתו. So this is talking about who is what פעולתו is
Peulato, I think he's talking of Matan Torah, the action of Matan Torah, so because Matan Torah because of Matan Torah, this was something that was more integral, and so and it was more internal than what existed before.
Right, and pierced further.
Yeah.
And because of that, even in the descent, after that, its effects, its actions are still prominent.
Right.
Still there.
Yeah. So I mean, I think what he's saying is that Matan Torah and in fact, I mean, this is something Jordan Peterson says a lot about Chet Ha'etz, the sin of the tree of knowledge. He's like, before that, the Satan was external to you. After we ate the fruit of knowledge, it became internal, and Matan Torah Od Yoter does this even greater of internalizing the spirituality that in a way that didn't exist before.
In a good way or in a bad way, or in both?
Yes.
Okay, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, we have this idea that it's we have this idea that we are progressing towards something greater,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have this idea that it's the darkest before the dawn, right?
I mean, greater is not great doesn't mean bad or good. The great
there is more koach. It's the koach to do good and the koach to do evil increases as we in fact become more godly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We become more like God, and in becoming more like God, we become more capable of making even greater mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Gimel. והדרך זה הוא גם בעניין העלייה בגאולה העתידה. And in a similar manner, we have the ascent that will be by the future redemption. שאז ילמד משיח תורה את כל בני ישראל כולם. Because then the Mashiach will teach Torah to all of Bnei Israel. Torato shel Mashiach, the Torah of the Messiah, bedugmat ha'aliyah shebematan Torah, which is similar to the ascent that was by Matan Torah, shegam ba ma'ala gedola v'yetera al ha'aliyah shebematan Torah. That in a way it has within it something even greater than Matan Torah. Uv'shnei ha'inyanim hanal, and and with these two inyanim, these two aspects, begilui ha'elokut milamala u'b'madragat madragatan shel bnei Israel v'ha'olam, and the revelation of godliness from above, and in the level of Bnei Israel and the world. So, because Mashiach is going to teach Torah to everyone, mm-hmm. and that Torah has a certain ma'alah, is in a certain way even greater than Matan Torah, that's going to cause a greater revelation of godliness from above, and a greater revelation of and a greater refinement of Bnei Israel and the world from below.
Okay, I'm curious. I don't know if he's gonna go into it. I'm just curious about if there's any idea of like what that means in terms of like like a greater revelation.
What you mean? How is the Torah of Mashiach greater than Matan Torah?
That, and also just I'm still struggling with like trying to separate like what's the distinction between us moving further up and the light, or the right the revealing coming down to us, and how like it's because it's, I understand that it's in one way separate, but also it's not separate, but I'm still struggling with that. So
yeah, I mean, it in a sense it is separate, and in a sense it's not separate, because there obviously it's possible for God to reveal things without an itaruta delatata, without an arousal from below. God could in fact rain down blessing upon us, and it's also possible for us to have an arousal and awakening towards God from below. But the fact is that what actually happens is that as we turn towards God, God turns towards us, and as God turns towards us, we turn towards God. So it's there is that reciprocity. That's, I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's there despite the fact that it doesn't have to be. And in a real sense, this is what we mean when we say that an ahava shelo talui bedavar, right? That a Torah true love, one that is eternal love, is a love that is not dependent on anything else.
Unconditional.
It's unconditional. It's complete, right? In that every time God turns towards us, we turn towards Him, and every time we turn towards Him, He turns towards us. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
It is, but it doesn't have to be that way, and that's the beauty of this marriage.
Yeah, I really like that, and I remember listening to Sachs talking about it, Rabbi Sachs talking about it. Talking about, I might misremember, but Isaac and Esav. Am I? Okay, I confuse Yitzchak Yaakov a lot. So
Yitzchak was the father of Esav and Yaakov.
Okay, great. So I got it right. So Yitzchak likes Esav, Esau, or likes, he loves him.
Right.
Not because it says that, some interpretation about Esav gives him a lot of food, prepares food for him and stuff like that, but it's really, nobody can understand, like it's hard to understand why Isaac would love Esau, but that's the whole point. It's unconditional. He chooses to do that, and that mirrors our relationship with God. So that was a really strong idea.
So it's kind of funny. People don't understand. I think oftentimes, right? There's a verse. God says, Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated, right? But what does it mean to be hated by God, right? soneh, right? So one way of understanding the word soneh is it has the same letters as shoneh, shin, nun, right?
Mhm.
Is the root of to double or to change, right? And so if God wanted to, I mean, the opposite of hatred is not uh, the opposite of love is not hatred. The opposite of love is indifference.
Mhm.
If God wanted, if God just didn't care about Esav, Esav would cease to exist. But God hates. What does it mean for God to hate something that He created? It means that He created it for the good, right? Called the Rahmana Avid Latav Avid, right? So there are things that are good and there are things that are for the good,
Yeah.
right? The example I like to give all the time is, what do you call a place you take little kids to torture them, to tie them down, stick needles into them, cut them open, poison them, make them cry? You call it a children's hospital, right?
Yeah.
um, and so a children's hospital is a horrible. It's a horrible place. It should not exist,
Mhm.
right? Yet, I give money to children's hospitals. I hope everybody gives money to. In fact, children's hospitals get more than enough money because people know we need children's hospitals.
Yeah, I'm in Memphis. This the St. Jude here is like
Yeah, I mean the funny thing is actually the children's hospitals get more money than any other charity. They're flush with money. Well, thank God, because people recognize that these horrible places of torture, right?
Mhm.
I mean, just imagine the things they do at a children's hospital. It's unthinkable,
Yeah.
right? You have a building dedicated to making little kids cry, right? But it's not good. I hate children's hospitals. I hate children's hospitals, right? I wish they would all cease to exist, right?
Mhm.
But that's because I want to fundamentally change the reality which makes them necessary.
Yeah.
And that, in a very real sense, is the difference between Yaakov and Esav, right? Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Ohalim, right? Yaakov is the good boy. He is the Ishtam, the whole person, Yoshev Ohalim, who sits and learns Torah, and uh, Esav is Tzayid, Ish Tzayid. He's a
Okay.
hunter. He's a murderer, right?
Mhm.
And the easy thing would be for all of the brachot to go to Yaakov, and you just get rid of Esav. What do you need Esav for? But you see that the Torah goes so far in order to make sure that Esav and everything like him, Esav, Ishmael, right? And this is the story of Yonah, right? Like Babylon has to uh, Jonah has to go to Babylon and make them repent because God cares about every single thing that He has created.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I was just thinking about because this was just in the parsha as well, but Amalek, and their connection to Esav, and also, and that's connected to Yitro, Jethro,
Yeah, Jethro. Yeah,
and his understanding of like his understanding. I forget his like what it meant for what he saw in how Israel handled Amalek and what they did with them and what happened there. Um, so, but I don't want to go too far into that.
these are patterns we see over and over and over
Mhm.
again in the Torah.
Yeah.
Right? These are self-reinforcing patterns that, yeah. Okay. Mavur Betanya. It is explained in the book Tanya by the Alter Rebbe. שאם היותיה בשגילוי הלקות שהיה במתן תורה היה בבחינת ראייה חושית, that even though the revelation of godliness that was at the Matan Torah at Sinai was at a level of actual physical seeing, ראייה חושית, בכל זה, even so, היה זה רק מעין ודוגמת הגילוי שיהיה לעתיד לבוא. Even so, that was only a little bit like what that will be in the future. Hooray! Yeah.
No, I was just curious. It's just interesting. This is more etymology, but me'ain, I wonder if it has like if it's a relation to Mayan, which is small pond. So I guess maybe a pond is just like a pond is only a fraction of a sea or a lake, like the Tiberias Sea.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. A Mayan is a little font, and there shall be rivers. Yeah. Hare muvan mize. We can understand from this shebichinat v'nigla kavod havaya, that was revealed the glory of the Tetragrammaton of the Gomer, gilui or Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the revelation of the infinite light, be he blessed, sheyeh latid lavo, that will be in the future, hu na'ala yoter mibichinat gilui halakut shehaya b'matan Torah. So that tells us that the revelation in the future will be even greater than that of Matan Torah. V'gam benoga lemadragatam shel bnei Yisrael v'ha'olam, and similarly regarding the level of bnei Yisrael and the world, harei latid lavo yekuyam ma shekatuv. In the future, there shall be a fulfillment of what is written. Et ruach hatum'a a'avir min haaretz. I will take a'avir. I will move away. Exactly. I will. I think he's gonna say more clearly what a'avir means. But the spirit of impurity shall be removed or transfigured from the world. Bala hamavet lenetzach, that death shall be swallowed up forever. The Gomer, v'hainu, and that is to say, lo kemo shehaya b'matan Torah sherak paska zuhamatan, not how it was by Sinai, that the zuhama, what do we call that?
Defilement.
Yeah, the defilement is going to end or stop. V'adayin nishara efshariyut shetachzor la'acharei zeh, with a possibility that that defilement should come back in some way afterwards. U'komo shehaya b'poel al yedei chet ha'egel, like what actually happened by the sin of the golden calf. V'hayinu lefi hazichuch shenif'al ba'olam, rather what the refinement that shall prevail, that shall be worked into the world, lo haya mitzad ha'olam atzmo, it's not something that comes from the world itself. Ki im mitzad hamshachat v'gilui elokut milamala, rather it is something that draws down and reveals godliness from above. V'lachen bimshoach hayovel, and so it is in bimshoch hayovel, when I think this is talking about when the trumpets blasts are the shofar is blown upon the jubilees. Kishenistalak nistakel
Istalek.
נסתלק, גילוי זה הייתה שוב אפשריות לחזרת הזוהמה, that once that, so what happens by the Jubilee is that when the Jubilee happens, there's a freedom, but then you have the cycle of the Jubilee over again, right? So it's a continual thing. That once the actual revelation stops, it's possible for the defilements to come back. Aval latid lavo hayinu, but in the future it will be she'inyan hatum'a v'hazuhama yeuvar legamre, that these the very idea, the concept of defilement and impurity will be changed completely. V'hayinu sheha'olam atzmo mitzad inyano, that the world itself, from its very inner aspect, hu yitbarer, it will be clarified, v'yistakech, and will be refined. ולכן גם הגילוי והעלייה שיבוא על ידי זה. Therefore, the revelation and elevation that will come through this, יתגלה ויחדור בעולם באופן של נצח. It will be revealed and will dwell in the world in the manner of eternity. It's 5 o'clock. We got another hour. Go ahead.
So it says טומאה וזוהמה יועבר לגמרי, ואינו שהעולם עצמו מצדנו הוא יתברר, וזה לכן גם הגילוי. Right, so the world will clear, and his dekech will become purified, or clearer, and then because of that, also the gilui, the revelation, will be.
Right, because it's not that it won't be okay. So it's kind of like if I give you some food, right, you'll go back to being hungry. But if I teach you how to feed yourself, then you will exist in a state of not needing what I have to give you, right? So since it's going to be, in a way, it's not going to be like the Yovel, right? The Yovel comes and the slaves go free, or the land returns to where it's supposed to be, and then we have the cycles, right? It's going to be that the world itself is going to change so that it will be an eternal and nitzchi thing.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. And the only thing that I was thinking about that is a connection is that also in Matan Torah, the word of God, or how he revealed himself, was, I think it says, it's like a chatzutzra, which is like the trumpets that was, so the same thing that happens in the Jubilee, where the trumpet is, or the shofar.
Yeah,
the same thing.
Teka b'shofar gadol l'cheretenu, right? So we say that the great shofar will be called when Mashiach comes, because then that's going to be an eternal shofar.
Yeah. Okay, so we are at Daled.
Yes.
והנה מזה אשר דווקא לאחרי הירידה היא העלייה הנעלית ביותר. And after after this, so here it is after this descent. The ascent is the most נעלית ביותר, most precious.
Yeah.
Sorry. מובן אשר הירידה אינה אלא הכנה מוכרחת. So this is what you said about like the descent is in order for the ascent. It's like it's to prepare for the ascent. So that's, I think you gave an example of like when you jump, you crouch and then you go up.
Yep.
מוכרחת לעלייה הבאה אחריה. והיינו כי דווקא העבודה במקום הירידה היא המביאה את העלייה. So דווקא העבודה במקום הירידה, so if I take this literally, it means the work you do where you're at when you're in that descent, במקום is also place, היא המביאה את העלייה. So that work is going to bring you the ascent.
Exactly. Yes.
וכמו שהעלייה דמתן תורה, and like the ascent from מתן תורה, בא על ידי הכנה דמעשה אבות. So so the הכנה דמעשה אבות, is that how Abraham and Jacob and Isaac, they were doing the mitzvah, they were kind of preparing us for this?
Right. I mean, so in order to have Matan Torah, you had to have all the way from, you had to have the whole story that went all the way from Habrit Ben Habatarim, the covenant between the pieces with Abraham, and the descent into Egypt, and then the ascent out of Egypt until you come to Matan Torah, right? All of those things had to happen in order to get to the point where you have Matan Torah.
Right, so ואחר כך הבירור וזיכוך דקור הברזל במצרים. I don't remember, so and later on the clarification and purification in the metal, the iron core, which is
the iron what do you call it, prison that is Egypt.
Yeah,
right?
Kur garini in Hebrew we would use it for like a nuclear core, I guess, or a nuclear. So that's what it reminded me of that. Cool. So I guess I've never heard Kul Barzel. I don't think I've heard Kul Barzel.
Kur HaBarzel is one of the ways that and I guess he says this, verse 36, Malachim Aleph Chet Nun Aleph. So 1 Kings 8:51 is Egypt is referred to as Kur HaBarzel, however that gets translated.
Which makes sense. I mean, probably in many levels, but what level would be? I mean, like the technological nation in weapons. So
there is that too, right? So the idea is that it was impossible for Israel to leave through natural means, because Egypt was a Kur HaBarzel. It was an impossible thing to escape through human means.
Right. Yeah. And I just saw in the parasha talking about Jethro, and talking about how that was one of the things that impressed him, about how like not even one slave could leave Egypt, and here is a whole nation of slaves leaving Egypt, and he was like, okay, there's something here. I mean, and it was a continuous kind of like these things. It was that. Before that, there was a midrash about him, and then Amalek, and then the sea. So שהם שהכינו את בני ישראל והעולם שיוכלו לקבל הגילוי דמתן תורה. So these things, the ascents and descents, these are the things that prepared Israel and the world to to have Matan Torah.
So to be able to receive Matan Torah,
be able to receive Matan Torah. So it's interesting that sometimes he says Shechinu et Bnei Israel, and then במרכאות, והעולם. What's the significance of, like, here he says Bnei Israel and the world?
So when the Rebbe gave sichot, he often would only talk about certain matters, and when the sicha was typed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Rebbe would add certain words so that people should not misunderstand what he was saying when he spoke off the cuff. So I don't know if this particular sicha, I'm guessing it is what's called a muga sicha, which means that the Rebbe went through it himself and added notes. And it's possible that it was even a sicha that he that was recorded. I don't know when this was. The Rebbe spoke on Shabbat and holidays, and on those days, obviously it was forbidden to record what he said. So he had 18 to 20 secretaries who would memorize what he said, and then at the end of Chag or Shabbat, they would each sit down, write down what they remembered, and prepare the sicha. And then oftentimes they would present it to the Rebbe, and if the Rebbe made changes or didn't make changes, they would print it. Sometimes the Rebbe never gave the sicha back, and so they would print it, but they would write on it bilti muga. So there were times when the Rebbe felt that the speech wasn't really something that was complete enough that people would not make mistakes reading it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be very, very careful with a bilti muga sicha, with a sicha that the Rebbe did not make corrections to. And even so you see here, he probably only said Shehechinu et Bnei Israel sheichlu lekabel hagilui de Matan Torah, but people might make the mistake of thinking that this hachana was only for Bnei Israel, and I think this may have been the Rebbe adding notes that it's not just Bnei Israel. This is a hachana for kol ha'olam kulo.
Mm-hmm. Okay. כך, על ידי ההכנה של מעשינו ועבודתנו כל זמן משך הגלות. So, by this preparation of our actions and our work as long as we are in exile, בבירור וזיכוך העולם, עד שהעולם עצמו, so our work and our actions in purifying and clarifying the world, עד שהעולם עצמו מצד עניינו הוא יזדכך ויתעלה כנ"ל, תבוא העלייה דגאולה העתידה. So by this work that we will do, the world itself, from his end, will purify and ascend, and then the Geulah, the future redemption will come.
Right.
So the העולם עצמו מצד עניינו הוא יזדכך. So what is the Rabbi referring to when he says olam?
Well, so he means milamata, right?
Right.
So it's right. Olam is lashon helem, right? Is
right.
The hiddenness, right? So we have or Ein Sof milamala. We have God and the purity from above. But when we actually work in this world, when we work to refine the world in which we live, right, and make the world a better place, the world is being prepared in a way that it itself is going to be refined, so that the future redemption will be something nitzchi, will be something that is permanent.
Right, and that's what we discussed before.
Yeah.
Cool. So, can I take a 2-minute break?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I'll be right back.
He is going to take a 2-minute break. If anybody watching has questions, you can feel free to ask. Also, my mom called me, so let me see. You're back.
Yep. Yeah, my mic and camera didn't work for some reason. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I think we're at 5. All
Yeah.
right. So
Okay. Hey. והעניין יובן בהקדם הקושיה הידוע על מה שכתוב שמע ישראל וגומר השם אחד. And this can be understood by first explaining the question that is famous regarding the Shema, the Lechora Haya Mitayem Yoter Lomar Hashem Yachid. That it would have made more sense to say God is unique, not God is one. Ki milat echad eina more lechura, because one at first doesn't seem to make sense. Al amitit yichudo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to explain the true level of God's unity. Shehare yesh echad haminui, because there is such a thing as the ordinal number one. Sheyesh sheni, that there would be something else. Lo, that there would be that if he is one, then there could be a second. ולכן נאמר יש אחד ואין שני, and that's why we say there is one but not two. כי מילת אחד לבדה עדיין אינה שוללת שני, because the number one by itself does not exclude a second. מה שאין כן מילת יחיד, which isn't true of the word unique, sholelet meikaro inyan shel sheni. It excludes from the ab initio, from the very essence of the word, the concept of having a second. The habiur bezeh, and the explanation to this, the hi hanotenet, that this teaches us tachlit v'amitit achduto shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu eina nikeret b'shlilat kol metziut zulato, that the true unity of God is not understood through excluding all the very existence of something else, me'ikaro, essentially, bechinat yachid, through this concept of unique. Ki im davka ka'asher yeshna metziut shel olam, rather, because there is this possibility of the world existing, ibikol zeh, and even so, nirgash ba'olam she'ena eno metziut la'atzmo, but this world, this hiddenness, recognizes that it has no essential existence, that it is yesh me'ayin, that it is ex nihilo. Bezet davka mitpatat amitat achduto, through this shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through this, that there is the bitul, right? That God creates us, and we recognize that we ourselves are nothing. That's how Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We recognize that in fact it is God who is the essential existence, and our existence is kamei kelo chashiv, is like nothing before him. This is something Hasidus goes into at length. I don't know if we need to explain it more deeply or not here, but yeah, that's what he's referring to.
Right, and so this is one of the things that Rabbi Sachs touched on in his in the Torah studies, and I guess this connects. I mean, it's going to continue, but I guess it connects to. I feel like it connects to what I'm getting from this is it connects to what we talked about. How everything in the world has God is in everything in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So this emphasizes that it's not unique in a sense and So it's not unique and separate from the world. It's I mean, there's an emphasis of like it's one with the world. It's also beyond it, but I guess there's is there more of an emphasis on trying to make sure that people understand that he is in the world?
I don't know if he's gonna say this, but. So there is the verse V'yedata hayom v'ashavota el levacha she Hashem hu Elokim, right? You should put upon your heart. You should know today and put upon your heart that the God is God, right? The Tetragrammaton is God. Ein od, there is no other, right? There is that commandment, right? That commandment, right? Without creation, that commandment could not exist, right? So the commandment, what is the commandment? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? The commandment is listen, Israel, right? You see this world, right? Where there are many powers, right? But even so, you have to put upon your heart, you have to, and this is the love of God, right? Is to recognize, even in this darkness, that there is God, right? So if it was Hashem Yachid, right, and there was no world, there was no hiddenness of God, there would not be the light of that recognition from the darkness that it doesn't actually exist. Ein od, that there is nothing but godliness, that God is the actual existence, and that everything else is just helam. It's just alma de shikra. It's something that is not essential like the being of God. Without that, there would be no Shema Yisrael. There would be no commandments. There would be no, so God, in his very nature, is a creator, right? But there can be no creator unless there is a created, right? So God creates, yet that creation, despite the fact that it is created by the creator, is kulo kameh kalachashe. It is completely, as if it is completely nullified to him, because he is the only essential existence, and everything else is yesh me'ayin, is something ex nihilo that exists solely by virtue of the fact that God makes it exist.
Right. Everything else, isn't everything else yesh mi-yesh? Like, except for
everything God. We create is yesh mi-yesh.
Yeah, okay.
But Hashem created yesh ma'ayin, right? And ultimately, the ayin, right? Ein sof, the infinite, God is in fact that ayin. God is that beyond that infinite, right? That, so all our yeshut, all our existence is in fact batel, and this is why the greatest. So Matan Torah, right? Why was the Torah given at Mount Sinai, which was the lowest of all the mountains? If it's meant to be at the lowest, why wasn't it given in the valley? No. Sinai had to be a mountain, but it had to be the lowest of the mountains. So it has an existence, right? So Sinai has an existence, but its existence is humbled to God.
Yeah, I think I understand. I'm trying to figure this out, because I know there's a philosophical level for this. I'm just trying to think about, why is it important to emphasize God within this world versus God that is above this world. And I'm thinking specifically, or that is beyond this world. And I'm thinking specifically, if we're thinking about if we're thinking about what are the values that are important to us. When we think about values that are important to us, why is it more important for us to know that there is something within this world also that brings all these values together, as opposed to just like this one thing that is like far away? That, am I making sense? Like, I'm struggling.
I think I get some idea of what you're asking. Hopefully, I'm gonna give some idea which might help, which is this idea of so Adam Kadmon was Zachar v'Nekeva, right? Adam Kadmon is both male and female.
Yeah.
Right? And there's the pirud, there's God separates the two from each other, and then they come back together, right? So if the whole point is the Yehud, right, and Adam Kadmon, then why do you have the pirud, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because without that separation, you cannot appreciate the unification. And I mean, ultimately, this is what a lot of the Christians in this little corner get into. Like, they're like, yeah, monism doesn't work. Yeah, monism doesn't work. And that's in fact what this is talking about. We don't believe in monism. We believe that God created something, created creation.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of creation is to recognize that it is tofel, that it is something which owes its existence completely to that which created it. And that's anava. That is humility. Humility isn't, so a lot of people think of humility as thinking that you're worthless, right? But that's not humility. Humility is recognizing that the koach, that all the capacities that you have, that Hashem hu hanoten lecha koach lasot chaya, right? It's not kochi ve'otzem yadi, that I'm not a yesh, that I'm not a thing of myself, but that it is God who, in fact, dwells within me. And so, yeah, I mean, that is Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad.
Mm-hmm.
The recognition, the Shema, right, is integral to that. What is the commandment in Shema Israel? Shema.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
And even though when we say Shema, right, it's kibul ol, and it's thinking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how he's echad and he's alufo shel olam and being completely mevatel, right? The commandment is that we should be mevatel ourselves to alufo shel olam.
Mm-hmm.
That kibul ol, because ein melech bli am. There can be no king without without subjects. There can be no father without his children.
Yeah. No, I think that's helpful. There is still something that I'm struggling to articulate, but I think we can. I think I can work on it.
Okay. 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 So where were we? Kim בדווקא כאשר ישנה מציאות של עולם וכל זה נרגש בעולם שאינו מציאות לעצמו, בזה דווקא מתבטאת אמיתת אחדותו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. וזהו עניין אחד. And that is what this concept of one, שגם כשישנו למציאות של עולם, that even though the world exists, mikol makom meyuchad hu amo yitbarach, hu imo yitbarach. It is, even though the world exists, it is in fact it set apart to him, yitbarach betachlit hayichud. It is unified with God in complete complete unification. Merumaz b'shlosh ha'otiyot b'milat echad, like the hint that we get in the three letters of the word echad. Daled Ruchot Ha'olam. The Daled is which has a numerical value of four, is the four directions of the world. Het Sheva Rekiot Va'aretz. 8 is the 7 levels of heaven and Rekiim Va'aretz, and the land. That is to say, all that is up and down, all that exists. Echad Hakadosh Baruch Hu Alufo Shel Olam, and the Aleph, which is one, is God, who is the Aluf, the
Champion.
chief, of the world. Vahapirush b'milat echad, and the explanation of the word one, hu shetzrichim lahamshich veliglot elkuto yitbarach, that we need to draw down and reveal his blessed divinity, hanirmaz be'ot aleph, that is hinted at by the letter one.
So is this the rabbi telling us we should discover the oceans, go to the skies, like?
Well, I mean, yeah, that is a part of it. That is definitely a part of it. Yes.
Yeah.
That we have. I mean, ultimately, we're not Gnostics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point is to, in fact, bring godliness, right? What is one of the first commandments in Genesis is to conquer, to have dominion over the earth, and and later to conquer the land, right? We talk about kibush haaretz, right? Ultimately, we're not Gnostics. We're not trying to flee from this world. We're trying to make this world we're trying to make God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
שצריכים להמשיך ולגלות אלוקותו יתברך הנרמז באות א' בעולם, in the world, הנרמז באותיות ח' וד'. The world which is, so in fact, you're taking the aleph and you're bringing it to het and dalet, right? You're bringing it through the 7 celestial heavens into the earth and the arba ruchot, right?
And you're revealing it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kefi shehu b'metziuto u'b'dargav hu yurgash, that so as it is in its essence and its level, it should be felt. Shekol metziuto hu alufo shel olam, that its existence, its essence, is only the alufo, the chieftain of the world. וכמרומז גם בזה שהאלף שבמילת אחד הרומזת על אלופו של עולם, and also since the letter aleph that is in the word one, that suggests the chief of the world, he harishona, that it's the first letter, v'kelulim bah ubetelim eleha hachet v'hadalet, and the next two letters are brought together with that first letter, hamerumazaot al metziut ha'olam, which suggest the existence of the world, right? So just the fact that the word echad starts with an aleph itself is giving an indication that echad is about recognizing God, the fact that God is the cause and the ground of being.
Mm-hmm. So the Chet and Daled are within him, or part. Like, I mean, it's in many different ways. I mean, it's like it's part of it, but it also they are betelim. Like, I think you had a better word, but like canceled within it, like canceled,
nullified.
Yeah. Okay. ו' אך לכאורה, איך יהיה העולם? לכאורה, but so how would the world be? שעניינו כשמו להעלים ולהסתיר על אלוקות, כלי לקבל, which in his essence or his thing, as is his name, like you say, like olam ne'elam, like
world and hiding is in fact the two words are related in the Hebrew. So how does this thing which hides God, how does it become kli lekabel, become a vessel to receive godliness which it hides?
באופן שיתגלה על ידי זאת אלופו של עולם. So how is it going to become that vessel in a way that is also going to reveal God? הנה לזה נתנו, what is that?
Torah mitzvot.
הנה לזה נתנו תורה מצוות לישראל במתן תורה. For this was given the Torah and the Torah of mitzvot to Israel in מתן תורה, בכדי שבהם ועל ידי יבררו וישכחו את העולם ויעשו דירה לו יתברך בתחתונים. So with this Torah and mitzvot that was given, they would be Israel would be able to clarify and purify the world, and would do to it the I think this is like the term, right? Like a place in the world, the word below. The
right.
World
so one of the ways that Hasidus explains that the reasons for God creating the world, one of those is that Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu Dira Lo Yitbarach B'Tachtonim, that God wanted to create a dwelling place in the nether worlds. What exactly that means?
Okay. וזה שבמתן תורה ניתן הכוח לברר ולזכך את העולם. And in מתן Torah, it was given the power to clarify and purify the world. היינו לא זו בלבד, שאז ניתנו התורה ומצוותיה, שעל ידם יעשה העולם דירה לא תחתונים. So by them, the world will make this dwelling place in the netherworlds. אלא שגם עצם גילוי האלוקות שבמתן תורה, but also by this revelation in מתן תורה, ומדרגתו של העולם באותה שעה, נתנו הכוח על בירור וזיכוך העולם לאחרי מתן תורה. So by this revelation itself was also that also gave the power to purify and clarify the world after Matan Torah.
Right. So right? It wasn't just that God revealed himself on Matan Torah, but he gave the Torah and mitzvot on Matan Torah so that these things can be used in order to rectify the world, to purify the world after Matan Torah. That's why the Torah was not just a revelation of godliness, but also a revelation of Torah and mitzvot, of commandments that we take away with us after Matan Torah, so that we have a capacity to improve the world.
Right. So it's a blueprint, and it's also, I mean, 613 Ramach Revarim. So it's like it's the same number of bones in the body.
Bones, pieces of the body, and shasa, right? Ramach avarim, shasa yamim, right? So 365 days is the same. 365 plus 248 comes out to 613. So in a sense, it's giving us an indication that we were put into the world to spend our time, to spend our days refining the world and purifying it.
Right, refining the world and purifying it, and refining ourselves and purifying us, because there's all this relation to Chomer and to the world, to the material, and us.
Yeah, when we talk about Dira B'Tachtonim, so what does that mean, Dira B'Tachtonim, right? God really wants a house by the beach, not on the mountaintop. What is Tachtonim? Tachtonim is spiritual lower worlds. And what's the lowest spiritual place? The darkest place? It's the heart of a human being. Why? Because a stone was created a stone, and it does what it does, right? It has no capacity to sin. But when you are given the capacity of doing right and wrong, right? Mm-hmm. You're able to do that which spiritually is completely against your very essence, what you were created for. You are then spiritually the furthest place. But, excuse me, if you turn towards God, then you're creating a dira lo yitbarach betachtonim. You're creating a dwelling place for God in that spiritual place which is furthest away from Him, a place, the human heart, where you could, in fact, do something so incredible as to deny God.
Right, yeah. I mean, the lowest place, you say the heart of God, but also in modern Hebrew, tachtonim is underwear. So
yeah, that too.
Yeah. So that part too.
Yeah, that too. Yes. Yes, we have great capability of creating of sinning with our lower regions as well. Mm-hmm. This is definitely true.
I think בשעה שניתנה התורה, right? Mm-hmm. בשעה שניתנה התורה, at the time when the Torah was given, נתבטל העולם במציאותו לגמרי מחמת עוצם הגילוי של למעלה. The world itself was nullified, totally nullified, because of this revelation from above. והיינו שביטול זה היה מורגש גם בעולם. And this nullification was felt also in the world, I guess, in the world beyond, not only in Sinai. I guess maybe that's the emphasis.
Right. Yeah. So like we said, Mayanus Hayam, and so at the moment of Sinai, right, the world completely changed, like he's going to say right now. So
right, and in the Yam Suf, in the crossing of the Red Sea, all the seas in all the world, all the body of waters were also.
Right. I mean, there have been other miracles. I mean, the flood. There have been miracles which have completely, like all the miracles of Egypt, in a real sense, were for the entire world. But Matan Torah was something that's indelibly etched. And frankly, I mean, for me, the biggest proof of this is that wherever you go, everybody's like the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments. Like, there's no reason why everybody should be so thing like, yeah, we all love the Ten Commandments. Why does everybody love the Ten Commandments?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was such a revelation of godliness that it's etched itself into the soul of the entire world.
Yeah. Kemal Zal, so like our sages said, Tzfor lo tzavach.
Tzipor lo tzavach. A bird did not tweet, I guess.
Tweet or shriek. Tzavach, I don't know if like it's like more loud. El haolam shotek uvacho. Tzipor tzavach ko el haolam shotek.
So at Matan Torah, even the birds weren't chirping.
Right, and the world was silent.
Yeah.
ואף שהעולם עצמו, כמו שהוא בגדריו ובמציאותו, לא היה ראוי. And even when the world itself was בגדריו ובמציאותו, was in his essence, was not ready, or was not
ready yet.
Yeah. To receive that light from above in מתן תורה. ורק שנתבטל מגדריו או ממציאותו מצד הגילוי הבא מלמעלה, ולכן היה זה רק לפי שעה כנ"ל.
Right. So the revelation of Matan Torah, right? So it says the world was shotek, right? The world was silent. Why? Because it itself was not at a level where it could actually be a vessel for this level of holiness, but there was such a revelation from above that it caused it for that moment to be quiet and to accept and to receive this holiness.
Yeah. הנה ביטול זה בשעת מתן תורה, and this nullification at the time of מתן תורה, הוא שנתן כוח שיוכל העולם להתברר ולהזדכך. That is what gave the world the power to purify and clarify and ascend and descend, ולהתעלות אחר כך עד אשר יהיה כלי ודירה לו בתחתונים. So that was what gave the world Matan Torah, or the nullification during Matan Torah. That was my Hebrew and English is getting mixed together. That is what gave the world the power to purify and clarify and ascend, in order for it to also become that vessel and that dwelling place for God.
Right. Yeah. So. It was in a sense it prepared the world to be vessels, because the Torah and mitzvot, right, were given, and so there was a potential for it then being prepared, so it itself will in fact rise to the level where it will be mityached, will unify with God completely, as I'm sure he will talk further on when Mashiach comes.
So I mean, I'm trying to find other analogies for this. So this that makes me think of in our first session last week. You were saying, you asked me, did you prepare? And I said yes. And you said it's nice to come in without knowing what is going to happen, because then, so that makes me think, right?
Yeah. I have to tell you, like the Rebbe's Sichas, like it's just so interesting to me, because like he asks these questions and they're like real questions, right? And I think about them and I'm like, I don't have answers to these questions. And it's even more amazing because it's like, these aren't questions, like So if you've actually been to a real Torah library and seen the thousands and thousands and thousands of books, right? The fact that these are questions he's asking, like if somebody else had asked the question already, it's in the footnotes and he'll say like so and so said, right?
Yeah.
But these are actually chidushim. These are questions that he's coming up. And what always amazes me, and it's like it's almost a tiny bit of a hint for me, like where his answer is going to be, that I know that when we get to the answer, it's going to have a lesson for how we should live our lives and be better people. Like he's not just making a fine point, right?
Right.
By the end of it, he actually has a practical lesson for how like we should orient ourselves in the world in a way that is more holy. And just the fact that like so like Likutei Sichot, I believe there's 39 volumes, right? And you saw like we're halfway through this and we've taken 4 hours, right? And like getting through Likutei Sichot, I could spend the rest of my life trying to study Likutei Sichot. I don't think I would get through all of them. And then the Maimarim. I personally, like the Sichot are nice, but the Maimarim, oh my God. They just blow you away, right? And it's so I actually like I could have read through this before, but it's like I just love I love getting to the end and being like blown away by it.
Well, it's not, and the point I was making was that the bitul, the nullification, like you can't nullify yourself if you know the answers, or if you've got if you know an answer. Like if you really want the teacher, let's say the rabbi here, to give you something, and you want to like have the insight for like have their perspective, embody them, however we want to say it, then you have to not have the answer, and that will prepare you to be that vessel. And then from there, I guess that's where Mashiach comes in, because first we're the vessel, and then something else needs to happen. I don't know. But,
no, that's I mean, that's definitely the case. The question has to create that halal, has to create that place in the vessel in order to receive, right? Yeah. So the questions he asks, like if you actually bother, like asking the question, okay, so why is it like this? So Moshe Rabbeinu is asking God, Shalach b'yad tishlach, right? Send through who you're going to send, meaning send Mashiach. So why not Mashiach, right? Why doesn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu send Mashiach, right? And I mean, I the only thing I've gotten so far, like he keeps on talking about Netzach, and obviously Netzach is the embodiment of Netzach was Moshe Rabbeinu. So I'm guessing he's gonna combine those two somehow, and we'll see. But it's there. You have to actually hear the question and sit in the question and feel the question, and then you can go further and actually have room for the answer to bowl you over.
Right. And it's also isn't it like you having you need to have the question. You really need to, like, even, I mean, you might generally don't know, not know. But you also, I feel like this is an important point, even practically. Like, even if you think you know something, just ask the question so that you have that space to have something else. Yeah.
Too many people think that a good answer nullifies the question. A good answer doesn't nullify the question. A good answer moves you, and that's, I mean, ultimately the Socratic method, right? When somebody, instead of just telling you something, they ask you and they make you think about it.
Right.
That's when you make a kinyan on the actual thing, because you're working through it, and it's becoming a part of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just learning about the Talmud yesterday. In one of like JLI, they have all these courses. They have courses, so they were talking about Talmudic logic and how, like, you have a question, and like you can, the logic is that you have so many answers. There's so many different answers, so it's like it's very hard to be satisfied with one particular answer, or like just one proposition is probably not going to be suffice for any one question.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no, if so, that's the thing with, so the Talmud, we talk about the shakel and tarya, right? The back and forth, the give and take of, and one of the things that the Talmud itself asks is, what's the havamina? What would I have thought, right? So the Talmud is the Gemara is a discussion of the meaning of the Mishnah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Mishnah has all these teachings, right? So it says, for example, Arba Rosh Hashanah, there are 4 New Years. Well, there's lots of questions you can ask on that, but sometimes a lot of the things that it says is pretty clear, and it's like, well, my havamina, what would I have? Why does it have to teach me this, right? What would I have thought if it didn't, like, if this is something obvious, right?
Yeah.
So nothing in Torah is so obvious. Like, there's no halacha, you're not allowed to eat dirt. There's no halacha, you're not allowed to eat dirt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a halacha, you're not allowed to eat bacon. There's no halacha, you're not allowed to eat dirt. Right? Mm-hmm. So shouldn't it tell you, don't eat dirt, right?
Right.
No. That's a davar pashut, right? That's a davar pashut. The halacha is things, hava amina, I could eat whatever I want, right? As long as it's not dirt.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but there needs to be like the...
It's a training, it's a restraint, it's a I was actually thinking a lot, people in this little corner have been talking about fasting a lot, right? And whether how, and a lot of people, I mean, it's not even in this little corner, like, a lot of people are doing intermittent fasting, a lot of the health things of fasting, right? And like, plenty of people were like, why should I fast? I have food. Why should I fast? Right? But your body actually needs that. Same thing by exercise. Like, I have weights over there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I bought something heavy so I could lift it up and put it back down.
Yeah.
Right? Like, one of my rabbis said, if an alien came to a gym and saw all these people, like, at these machines, like, struggling with these machines, they would think, like, who's holding them? Like, where are the chains? Right? Yeah. And then, no, these people paid to get into this gym. Right? It's like, why are you doing this? Because it's an exercise. It's something that is a hachana and birur and zichuch, right? That gives you a potential and a capacity to do something greater than you were able to do before. And that is a chidush. That we need that in our lives.
Right. So I mean that's why we need that relationship with God in our life. because I mean that's gonna if we can do a callback of talking about conditional, unconditional. That was what you described now is the rational, what the conditional, like we do this for this, we do that for this, but in some sense that also needs to be unconditional. Or it's right. You don't have a relationship with God because it makes you. I don't know. In one sense, yeah, you don't have a relationship with God because it makes you a better person, or makes you earn more money, or makes you do this or do that. In some sense, you need to have a relationship that it's unconditional, that is
So yeah.
desirable, or like part of desire.
So when we say L'Shem Yichud, right? We say L'Shem Yichud Kudsha B'Richu Shchinte, right? B'tchilu Rechemu V'tchilu, right? With love and fear and love.
Yeah.
So the Kabbalists teach there is the greatest is D'chilu Ita, right? Greater. There's greater awe of God, then there's greater love of God, and then there's lower love of God, and the lowest is lower fear of God. So what's lower fear of God? So lower is not spiritual. This is material, right? So material fear of God is yirat ha'onesh, right? I need to do what God wants me to do because I'll go to hell, right? It's a physical thing. I am afraid of God punishing me, right?
Right.
That's the first and lowest level. The next level up is love of not onesh, reward, right? Scar, right? So that's, again, it's a physical, it's the first level is to know God will reward you for being a good person.
Yep.
But that's Yud K Vav K, right? So you have Yud K Vav K, right? You have the first two letters and the latter two letters, right? And the break is between Yud K and Vav K. It's between the ruchniut and the material, right? And so once you move to ruchniut, right, and it's no longer about a physical thing, right? It's no longer talui b'davar, and you love God. You love God not because he's going to punish you, and not because he's going to reward you, but because you know God. That's da'at, right?
Yeah.
Because you have a desire, an ahava for Hashem, right? And what's even above that is an awe of God, which is completely spiritual, which comes from a recognition of your own bitul, of your own nullification in God's glory.
Yeah.
Right? So that's yira ilah.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of reading and thinking to do about those levels.
Yeah. It's important, and honestly, Hasidus, like, the point of Hasidic philosophy is ahava and yira, right? To love, it is to bring that which is in your mind into your emotions.
Yeah.
Moach sholet al halev. And that's why it's called Chabad Hasidus.
Chokmah bin Adat.
Yeah. Yep. We'll make you a Chabad skirt.
I do like Chabad.
Me too. Have you noticed?
Yeah. There are a few hints here and there.
A few hints, yeah. Can't imagine what made you think
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah, I actually bought this in Jerusalem when I was in yeshiva, and I was at Or Sameach, which is a Misnagdish yeshiva. It's a Litvish yeshiva. So not huge friends of the Rebbe,
Mm-hmm.
but I was there because I was there because I was like, if it wasn't for the Rebbe, I would have never been there.
Yeah.
So I bought this and I hung it up in my room because I didn't want to forget that. And I've had many different periods in my life. I had my more Litvish phase, but yeah, it's I'm a weird guy. I'm a weird guy.
Yeah.
You may have noticed.
Cool. Well, I
Yeah.
guess
Book
Yeah.
club is in 55 minutes
mhm.
or less.
Yeah, I'm gonna fit dinner in between.
Okay, me too. I will see you at book club. Thank you everyone for watching. Please leave comments below. I can't believe that part 2 got more people watching than part 1. That's kind of weird, but at one point we had 8 people watching apparently.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this was really enjoyable. Very helpful.
Yeah. I am ending the broadcast.